Have you ever been terrified of the prospect of speaking to a pretty girl or guy at a bar? When I was a teenager, I was terrified of awkward silences and speaking to girls. Not just a bit scared or apprehensive, but actually terrified. In saying that, I was a generally very confident public speaker. And after all, I had done that from a young age. But I've met other people who are very confident in conversation, but their ultimate fear is speaking in front of a crowd. Curious. In either case, we know logically that the downside in each situation is very low. It was not as if a young lady or conversation partner would grow so angry with me at an awkward silence that they would, in rage and fury, strangle or decapitate me on the spot. My life was not in danger, just as life is not in danger when we speak in public. Yet, we get automatic fear sensations to the severity of a life and death situation. It was only years later that I would realize this was not my fault. Far from it. This was the panicked reaction of a frightened little dog, simply being manifested through me. Who controls your brain? Have you ever seen the 2008 Eddie Murphy movie, Meet Dave? In it, a group of tiny aliens are in the control room of what looks like a human body. And the effect is comical because they are trying to navigate acceptable human behavior. The Pixar Disney movie, Inside Out, in 2015, also took this control room analogy for the human brain. It had 5 personified emotions: joy, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust, tried to lead their human host, Riley, through life. I think this is a good metaphor for understanding our subconscious, the portion of our thinking we're not consciously aware of. Except there is nothing that resembles a human person sitting in the control room of your unconscious brain. In fact, it's a dog. 90% of your brain is run by someone called Astro the Dog. This is 90% of your wisdom, but it's an iceberg in a frozen lake. You can't consciously tap into it. This part of your brain, run by Astro, has been developing knowledge over the whole course of human history, being educated and refined by natural selection and evolution. Now, you may have heard of this before as the lizard brain, the monkey brain, or Jonathan Haidt's elephant and the rider analogy. But I refer to it as a dog called Astro. Whichever your chosen metaphor, the lizard, the monkey, the elephant, or our beloved Astro, one thing is always true. This part of our brain does not speak English, or Spanish, or Arabic, Mandarin, or any of the verbal languages of man. So what language or languages does Astro speak? How do we communicate with him? Well, let's go back, because maybe the first person to speak to dogs properly was Ivan Pavlov. Pavlov was using dogs for research and noticed that they would salivate at the sight of the experimenter who brought them food, before they had the food. They'd come to associate the experimenter with the meal. This was a breakthrough for Pavlov, who would go on to describe the phenomena as classical conditioning. Conditioning and reinforcement are the languages spoken by Astro, the dog who controls 90% of your brain. Dogs don't really understand sit. We condition them to understand it. When you teach a dog to sit, it does not do it the first time. It learns to sit when it hears the noise sit and sees you point to the floor because you train it over time with food or other rewards. Astro learns because you once gave him food after he made a sitting motion. When he tried it again, you gave him food again. So Astro learned that when you said sit, food was likely to come. But Astro doesn't speak English. That doesn't mean he speaks English. Hans the horse. Have you heard of De Kloek Hans the horse? His master, Willem van Osten, successfully taught him to count. Hans would tap with his hooves the answer, and then do more arithmetic, including multiplication. Hans was accurate enough to draw large crowds when they travelled together. This got so much press that a Hans Commission was established. It's ridiculous, I know, but this is what happened. This is a true story, this part. This Hans Commission, after thorough investigation, confirmed that there was nothing deceptive about Hans' performance. Though a psychologist by the name of Oscar Pfungst got Van Osten's permission to probe deeper. Gotta love Dutch names. He varied the questions and eventually found that Hans' performance diminished when Van Osten stood further away. So Van Osten was made to ask questions that Van Osten himself didn't know the answer to. And Hans' performance went from 89% accuracy to 0%. The answer soon became clear. As Pfungst observed the question askers more directly, finding they had tense facial expressions as Hans got close to the answer, which then relieved as he got to the right number. It appears Hans was using these facial expressions of the question askers as a prompt and did not really understand the maths problems. In the same way, Astro the dog, who is in the control room of the part of your brain that has been referred to as your subconscious, I think I missaid it before as the unconscious, your lizard brain or your elephant might appear to understand English very well, but he does not. He only understands conditioning, reinforcement, and modeling. Astro has more intelligence than the rest of us, but he is less refined, less aware of himself, and takes longer to train because it's harder to communicate with him on the account he doesn't speak English. So I'm going to pause that. That's part of the blog post from the website on Astro the dog who runs your life. We're going to talk a bit more about Astro in 1 or 2 more episodes after this, but he'll be one of those go-tos that we continually refer to for the duration of this podcast. But the first idea, the first thing to ram home is understanding that he doesn't speak English. So just to recap, our brains have been shaped a particular way by evolution to do certain things, mainly to survive. So the part of our brain that really has most control is very reactive, and it's become tuned to react in a way that helps us survive. So that's when I talk about the example of Joe, younger Joe more so, who's very confident public speaker because he's always done it. He's been conditioned to be okay with it. But when it's talking to certain people, especially girls when he's younger, and being afraid of awkward silences of all things, which carry no visible threat, no real threat rather, but they terrified him. It's not logical. We all have all these fears. The most extreme ones are called phobias. They're a little bit different. But we have a lot of these illogical, irrational, baseless, extreme fears. And I think fear of public speaking is more common than fear of death. That, again, there's no basis in logic. We have them because most of our brain really represents more accurately that of a dog rather than that of a conscious, independent, intellectualized human. So you can't speak English and expect it to change its behavior, those parts of your brain. Just saying that what's the worst thing can happen if you go speak to a girl or if you do a public speaking exercise, a speech, obviously. Just telling someone that is not enough. We're way more complicated than that. When you're talking to someone on that level, you're speaking to a dog. So for now, I want you to start crystallizing this. Just start observing your own thoughts, all right? Think about that idea that part of your brain, Astro doesn't speak English. Get used to that and start identifying the patterns when Astro is speaking. What he says, that voice in your brain. And we'll unpack more of that. And you might start noticing it in friends, but you're going to start flagging the reasons you do and do not do things. So that's been another episode of the With Joe Wehbe podcast, talking about Astro the dog as part of our How We're Wired and Meaning Fundamentals series. Just remember that the blog is available on the website, www.withjoewehbe.com, and you can sign up there to get all these sent to you via email. go back to the start of this podcast to get the episodes in the order that they were intended. But apart from that, above and beyond everything else, get excited because tomorrow we're going to be talking about how you actually train Astro, how you make changes. So just remember to keep opening doors, people, because the best way to open 1,000 doors for yourself is to concentrate on opening doors for others. And in understanding how we're wired, we're going to be opening a heck of doors. See you tomorrow.